So Yae Miko's finally going to have a rerun in like a week. It has been quite a while since she's been back, at least around 10 months now as her first release, so it's kind of a congratulations to those of you who want her and didn't really have to wait for a whole year before you could get her again. Now apart from those who have really decided to go for Yae Miko, I know that there's still many of us out there who's wondering whether or not she's still a worth it character and how good she is performing right now, especially after our Dendro reaction release, which is why today we have a video diving in depth to see whether or not Yae Miko is still a worth it character for you to pull for on your account. And so with that, let's just jump right in. Now first off, we'll dive deep into Yae Miko's pros and cons so that you kind of have a deep understanding of her gameplay once again. For Yae Miko's pros, she is a character that actually focuses most of her thing into her skills, in that everything within her kit direct toward increasing her E skill damage. Therefore, whenever you're focused on utilizing all of this and then focus on to building her E skill, she will be able to have the potential to deal very high E skill damage. Not only that, she's also one of a character that is very easy to play. You just have to set her up with her E skill, then switch her out to leave her skill do the work for around 14 seconds, which is a pretty decent time. Now unlike many other sub DPSs where there's a certain requirement in order to trigger that off-field damage, like for example you have to deal your normal attack, or like in Nahida you have to do a reaction damage in order for her skill to trigger, Yae Miko is just gonna leave her totem there and do the work for you, and she works exceptionally well, especially when you're up against AoE situation or in group battle, because her totem will be able to deal with multiple enemies at the same time for you, as it won't be focusing on one enemy at a time, which may be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you see it. It will be a bad thing if you're wanting to focus on one enemy at a time, but either way, as long as you are in an AoE situation, you can be sure that the totem most of the time will take care of enemies that is outside of your range, so that you don't really have to chase them down if you don't have a grouper like Venti or Kazuha on the team. More than that, Yae Miko works well in almost every single team that you can think of, because from the set it and forget it kind of gameplay that she's got, most of the time you only need to slot her on the team and then just leave her there to deal off-field damage. And furthermore, for those of you who love her as a character, she has one of the best character animation in the game, from her normal attack to her E skill showing a bit of her foxtail, and then finally her burst is just absolutely gorgeous. I just fell in love with this character and have her in literally all of my team runs. Now moving on to some of the downside of Yae Miko. First off, there are actually two of the biggest downside myths that I want to kind of bust and talk about specifically here. And then first off is Yae Miko's downside that the community consider to be one of the worst, which is that Yae Miko's E skill takes a long time to be on field, which makes her to be a bad character to run with, in which I would say nope, that's totally down to your thinking. Now unless you're someone trying to clear the abyss in like under 10 seconds, then yes, that would affect your run, but other than that, most of the time it doesn't affect anything. We know that it takes like 1 second for other sub DPSs like Fischl or Albedo to set up their skills and then switch out, but an extra 2 seconds to set up Yae E skill most of the time doesn't hinder your process of clearing out the enemies. Heck, for most player who loves Yae Miko, it is an enjoyable experience in of it itself, especially for me who love to see Yae in action. So having her using her E skill is kind of like a really pleasant experience all the time, since she looks really cute doing so. Therefore really guys, it's just pretty much a player preferences. And then the second biggest downside that Yae Miko has is that she has major energy issue, which is yes, that is 100% true. Yae will have energy issue unless you're running her as a full build burst damage set of emblem set, which is like over 200 energy recharge, or you're running her in a Raiden Shogun's team. Other than that, even with my C1 Yae, she won't be having bursts every rotation, but it's actually once every other rotation. Now, I wouldn't really say that this is wrong, but I would say that if you're focused on Yae's burst damage for every rotation, you're kind of missing out on the whole point of her kit, since it is focused on her E skill more so. Or in other words, Hoyoverse have designed Yae so that everything she has is focused onto her E skill. Her burst is only a bonus damage factor for her. You don't want to ignore her burst entirely here, but most of the time you will be focusing on building her E skill to deal the most damage that it can. So those are the two major issues that the community have been looking into Yae. The other one though, I would say only is that whether or not she is a better option for you to choose over the other sub DPS option that we already have in the game, in which we'll discuss this a little bit more in details later on in this video. And then finally, another one is that I don't know if this is considered to be a downside of Yae Miko, but talking about Yae's constellation, it is actually very good. With every single constellation that she has, increases her damage by at least 15%, even at Yae Miko C1, who doesn't entirely contribute in terms of her damage directly. So this is kind of like a special thing, because if we look into it, not every single Genshin Impact character has access to such good constellation in every single one of the cons that they have. So if you're someone who wants to take Yae's damage to the next level, investing her constellation pays off rather well. So those are some of the main pros and cons of Yae Miko ever since she was released. However, I know that many of us clicking onto this video is actually wondering on another question, in that how much have Yae Miko changed ever since Dendro was released? In that I would say with the release of Dendro reaction, it just basically buffed Yae Miko in every single way. It didn't take out anything of Yae and just basically adds in her damage by a ton. Because the two main things that Dendro buff have given to Yae is that first of all, obviously she has now access to aggravate, but not only that, usually Dendro reactions put emphasis onto your elemental mastery, especially when it comes to you running in Dendro Resonance team. And if you didn't remember, Yae's kit take quite a lot of benefits off of her EM level. So overall, it is a very significant buff towards Yae Miko. As in the past, she only has some of the best teams such as Electro Charge, Overload or Mono Electro. But now that Dendro have arrived, she has access to two of the best team in the game, which is Hyper Bloom and Quicken. We won't be diving too much in depth into her team builds, and I'll make a separate Yae Miko's updated build on a separate video. Now another interesting thing is that she works exceptionally well with our Nahida, because I've been playing around with her and Nahida quite a lot, and she was actually able to create another very good team in that she took our AFK team to the next level, and I won't be touching too in depth into this team. However, in the past her AFK team is already very good, but with the introduction along with Nahida, it has just become exceptionally a lot better. So that's something that you want to look forward to when testing out Yae Miko. So we already know that Yae Miko is a pretty decent character in terms of sub DPS role. However, the question that stops players from pulling her most of the time is whether or not she's actually a replacement for some of the current free-to-play sub DPS character that we've already got. Especially when we look into it, many of the time she rivals the position of Fischl and Beidou. However guys, we can kind of take Beidou out of the equation, because I know that many of you haven't been using Beidou too much and put your emphasis more onto Fischl. Plus the community have been comparing Fischl along with Yae Miko quite a lot, so I kind of want to address this as well. In that first of all, Yae Miko or Fischl in terms of gameplay level shouldn't actually be compared with each other, since they are totally different in how you play the two characters. First off, Fischl is a very fast swap in sub DPS to cast Oz and then exit the field, but can also be a very good on-field DPS dealer, whereas Yae is more of a slow sub DPS caster and won't be on-field but only as an enabler of reactions, such as you can have her on-field for triggering reaction based off of her EM, which is pretty good also. So whenever it comes down to feeling of gameplay, it entirely depends on you to choose whichever character you feel more good to use on the team. For field time time wise guys, they can kind of consider to be as nearly the same, because Yae actually lasts for 14 seconds, which is a very long time, while Fischl is only around 10 seconds before she has to go back and reset. And usually a 10-second uptime is considered to be pretty short for sub DPS, so you will be required to switch back to Fischl more often than not. However guys, here's the thing, if you've already have a high constellation Fischl, especially if she's on C6, she will basically be better than a C0 Yae Miko, because all of Fischl's constellation just basically enhances her odds damage so much, but moreover the advantage she has is that she's basically a free character you play through the game. Therefore Yae Miko just can't justify the fact that she can only be get through a gacha option. I can't really compare too in depth here in this video, otherwise it will be too long, but if you really want to check out more, then I have this video that you can watch after this. The only thing Yae Miko has over Fischl most of the time is how well she does in AoE situation compared to Fischl, because Fischl is actually more of a solo boss focused character, since her odds actually focus on one target at a time, unlike Yae Miko's, who is able to take out your enemies outside of your range, which is actually a pretty significant factor guys. With this only, I have already decided to use Yae Miko's most of the time over Fischl, because most of the time Yae just helped me clear out the enemies without me even having to do anything. And so those are going to be some of the most important points regarding Yae. Now that you've already got a whole picture of Yae Miko, we'll move on to the most important question of the video, which is that is she still a worth it character for you to pull on your account? In that there are 3 questions I actually want you to consider, which definitely will make your answer a lot clearer after this. In that the very first and the most important one of all is that do you actually enjoy Yae's gameplay, because she has a pretty unique gameplay of requiring her to be a little bit of on-field time, even though she's mostly an off-field sub DPS. If you don't like her style of gameplay, for every rotation you're required to spend like 3 to 4 seconds of her on-field just to set her E skill, then obviously she's not for you. Not to mention her burst just costs so much, of up to 90 energy, the highest character in the game until now. So if you're someone who really want to play around burst damage as well, she's definitely not going to be for you. So if you're someone who haven't been able to try Yae Miko out, I really do recommend you to try out in the trial, because from what you look on the screen versus when you play her in real time, it's quite significantly different. So you want to have a feeling of playing around with her first to see whether or not she fits your playstyle. And then the next important question, if you're more focused on the meta guys, is that you should look into whether you already have a high constellation Fischl, especially since guys, if you're hoping to pull Yae Miko so that you can take your team damage to the next level, then I wouldn't say that's gonna be the case, as a high constellation Fischl is already able to deal you pretty significant damage. And then the third question is that are you saving up for the Wanderer and Raiden Shogun? Now of course I'm not confirming that Raiden Shogun is coming back in the next patch, but I do believe that she's coming back pretty soon, so that's something you want to consider. In which here's going to be my personal advice guys, and you can choose to follow me or not, it's going to be totally down to you, but this is how I personally going to make my decision if I haven't pulled for Yae. In that if you truly love Yae, then just go for her, because you may be able to get Layla too, as Layla is on Yae Miko's banner. Now as I have mentioned above, if you're looking for a team improvement for your account, then a C0 Yae Miko will not likely to do the trick, since Fischl high constellation is already very good. So I recommend you to really consider if you're someone focusing on the meta. Plus there's going to be some very good character coming in patch 3.3, which is the Wanderer of course. However, he is once again a player preferences, so you want to look into that before you make the decision. However, the more important thing is regarding Raiden's rerun, because especially if you're someone who didn't have Raiden on your account, then generally speaking getting Raiden Shogun first at this point point is going to be more important since Raiden's just really good, especially when paired with Dendro reactions and Nahida specifically. Not to mention Raiden is already on her second rerun, so after that she will most likely not be returning in quite a while. So those will be some of the things that you really want to consider. And so guys, that's all I got to say on this video. I really hope that the video have been able to help you make a better decision. Now if you do have any question, please leave it down in the comment and I will get to you there. Now if you've already got Nahida currently on your account and you're looking for a fun team to play around with her, then I'm sure that the video where I dive in depth into the Archon team will surely be enjoyable for you. So if you haven't really tried the team out, be sure to check out the video. And with that, I wish you a super day and I will catch you on my next one.